Hello, everybody. Welcome to the buying process. This is the first of three-part series. Obviously, the first one we talk about buyers and buyers documents and just everything related to buyers. Next week, we'll talk about the seller's process, working with sellers, and then the third and final series class in the session is when buyers meet the sellers and you're under contract and it's contracts to close. So I try to keep it to about an hour, and this is very challenging because it's obviously online and I've got nobody in front of me. I'm just going to record this one. So hopefully it answers all your questions. If it does not, we are always here for you anytime you have questions. So you should have access to ALC phone numbers and other agents that are willing to help you out anytime you have questions. So don't just rely on this one class, obviously. Ask questions. Okay, so I started this class basically to help everybody in the process of when they're working with buyers, just high-level questions that they're going to be asking themselves or things that they want to know. It has really nothing to do with Keller Williams specifically. This is kind of just generic things that you need to know about doing this job. So keep that in mind. This is not a business building class. It's just specifically how to do the job. So I'm going to screen share and hopefully that works successfully. Okay, let's try that again. Hope it didn't work. I'll be showing you my notes. I don't usually share notes for this class necessarily. I don't have anything to hand out just because it kind of changes. It's kind of an organic class. It changes every time when I do have people in the class that ask questions and that kind of stuff. But I do have notes that I'll share with you that you can kind of follow along with. So hopefully these will get seen. Okay, so first part is a little bit about where to find business. That's obviously the most important part. And I start with the class of buyers because right now, especially, they're the easiest to get. A lot of people moving here. You should know somebody who's moving here. You should know somebody who knows somebody who's moving here. So the first place to definitely start 100% is with your sphere of influence. That means anybody in your phone, anybody in your history, whether it be where you've volunteered, where you've worked before, your friends, children's parents, anybody that you know, period. They need to know that you are in real estate and you need to be touching base with them and asking who they know that needs to buy a home. One of the other reasons I start with buyers is because it's usually a quicker process. And well, this class was created a couple of years ago when the market isn't what it is right now. Right now, if you have a listing, it can be a 30-day process. When I first started the class, when you had a listing, sometimes it took 45, 60, 70, 90 days to get it under contract. Right now, they're going right away. So it's probably equivalent to buyers. But we just want to get you a paycheck. We want to get you paid so that you have some money in your pocket, and then you can keep learning the job. So that's our first priority, is getting you a paycheck soon. And usually, buyers is one of the fastest. So if you can, like I said, reach out to your friends and family and find out who needs to buy a home. Some other options for finding business is doing open houses when you can find some that are open. We haven't had a lot of open houses lately. You can try to call for sale by owners and expired listings. The for sale by owners are obvious because they have the sign in the yard and they have their phone number on there. So Keller Williams does a great job of providing scripts for that. So this class does not go into scripts for calling for sale by owners or expireds, just kind of giving you the idea. When this class started, new construction sitting was a possibility. It's not as prevalent anymore, but if you wanted to go to, let's say, a D.R. Horton neighborhood and meet with the listing agent there and ask if they ever use a sitter or a sub, there's some ways you can possibly get new business. Social media connections, a lot of people are using the social media to find buyers. Command now, this class, when it was created, we did not have Command. Command now has fantastic ways for you to advertise listings on Facebook and generate leads. Chandra is the contact for that to find out how to do that. You can use anybody's listing as long as you give them credit for it, but you definitely want to make sure that you ask permission first. But most of the agents in our office would be happy to have you advertise their listing. You can door knock. Again, Keller Williams is big on providing scripts on how to door knock. and ways to do it, and also making sure that you get a permit for door knocking, because it does require a permit in most situations. Overall, you want to make sure that you pick 1 or 2 or 3 things that you know you will do. If you try to do all of these things, you're going to burn out. You're going to feel very discombobulated. It's kind of more like a shotgun approach when you try too many things to throwing at the wall to see what sticks. Usually nothing does. You really want to focus on 3 things that you enjoy doing, that you're good at. Some people love open houses. Some people hate open houses. Some people love to call for sale by owners to try to get them to list. Some people love expireds to call. It's really up to your personality. One of the things about for sale by owners, this obviously is a buying process class. For sale by owners are buyers as well, because when they sell their house, they're going to need somewhere to live. So that makes them a buyer. So a really great approach to calling for sale by owners is, not even trying to get to their listing. Just say, hey, where are you buying? I'd love to be able to help you with that. That's my expertise, or that's what I'm here for, and you don't have to pay me anything. So just think about that. It doesn't have to be just calling for sale by owners to get their listing. But overall, like I said, when you're talking about finding business, you really just want to focus on the 3 areas where you think you'll thrive the most. And your sphere of influence has got to be the very first one. When I first started, we have a church database that our church publishes actual phone numbers and addresses with names of our parishioners, and I wrote them cards. I wrote 10 a day until I wrote everybody in the entire directory a card that says, hey, just FYI, I'm new to the business and I'd love to be able to help you or your friends or family or anybody looking to buy or sell. And it was very inexpensive. It was not hard to do. Really, all it took was just a little sweat equity. And I just bought little cards from the Dollar General, and they didn't even have my logo on it, nothing. I put a card in there and that was it. But that's something easy you can do. Letter writing is a great way to get in front of people, because it isn't done often. So those are just some ideas. Again, our classes like Ignite and Bold, and really kind of any other online things in Command that you look at, any videos online can give you a good idea of where to find business. But I did want to touch on that a little bit. So now working with buyers. So once you're lucky enough to finally find a buyer and you're out getting ready to look, the first thing you really need to do is be able to have a consultation with that person, with him or her or the family. And the reason why that is important is because you want to establish your value as a professional. A lot of times people just, especially buyers, they just want us to be door openers. They want us to just hey, can you open? We really want to see something. Most buyers just want to see something. Sorry. And that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to just go open the door. We want to make sure that we are giving them what we call our value. So we want to make sure we're coming from a place of being able to explain our value to them. Okay, so I'm going to go back since you don't want to look at my notes the whole time. So you want to provide value to your clients, and you do that by doing a buyer's presentation. You can have some printed material to show them. You can have material on a laptop. Command has embedded in it some great buyer's presentations that are already done for you, and all you have to do is drop in your personal information. If you haven't logged into Command yet and looked at designs, you need to do that. There's some older ones on, I don't want to go into this because we don't use it so much anymore, but there are some older presentations out there that you can do the same thing with in PowerPoint if you're not big on designs. But you can also just Google search buyer's presentations from other companies and put together your own presentation. It doesn't have to be from Command. During Bold, we do get a really great presentation during Bold that you can, that's actually, I think that's a PowerPoint presentation. That's something you do on your laptop, and just has some great information in it. But whatever it is, the major things I usually cover in my buyer's presentations have to do with the first steps of the process. And basically, I talk with my buyers through the importance of getting pre-qualified. That is 100% must right now. All of our buyers have to be pre-qualified before you put them in the car. It's the most easiest thing to say right now. Before people would say, "Oh, we'll get one. We'll get a pre-qualification when we're ready to when we find the home we want to put an offer on." well, you don't have that much time now. In our market currently, the minute a house is listed, more than likely there will be offers on it, especially if it's priced well and in a good location. Our buyers have to be ready to make an offer on it that day. I just had a consultation with a buyer today who's like, hey, I want to go see this house tomorrow. And I said, well, you don't have your pre-qualification, so we can't go anywhere because this house is going to have multiple offers and no agent will look at your offer. If you're truly serious about this house, if you really want it, no agent's going to look at your offer without a pre-approval. So we're not going to waste time getting in the car and you falling in love with it. I don't want you to fall in love with a home and you not be able to get it simply because you weren't prepared with a pre-qualification letter. So that is pre-approval, pre-qualification. There's different levels to them in the lending world, but you really just need one or the other. But that is a great script to tell them if they say, oh, well, I'll get a pre-qualification when I find a house that I like. You don't have that much time. Well, you need to get it before we get in the car. And that really just saves you from wasting time with a buyer who's not serious. And again, our market is lending itself to be able to use that script because it's true. Houses are going so quickly. And it's also true, no seller is going to accept an offer without a pre-approval. I also go over the costs of buying a home with them. If you don't know 100% that your buyer knows what costs are associated up front with purchasing a home, you shouldn't put them in your car. If you have a buyer that does not have $500 in their checking account, they're probably not ready to buy a house. Just because they got an approval to purchase does not mean they have the funds required to actually purchase a home. And by that I mean, it takes at least, you have to, well, you don't have to, but it's the best idea to have an inspection. So they need to know, are you aware that 2 weeks after, or less than 2 weeks, 10 days after your offer is accepted, you have to get an inspection? Again, you don't have to get an inspection. It is highly recommended that you get an inspection. They run between $300 and $500, sometimes $650. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, are you aware that's money you will not be getting back? Are you aware that's money that you have to pay up front? That type of thing. The earnest money is also something that actually gets taken out of their checking account, within the first couple of days. It is money that credits to their loan, but it does get cashed. So when they have an earnest money check that you provide to Stephanie at the office, she cashes it. It goes into our account, so it gets cashed. So usually earnest money is a minimum of $500. And in this market, sometimes it's $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. It can be depending on the price point of the home. It can be, some sellers are requiring 2% earnest money. So it could be $10,000. It just depends on the house. But you need to know your buyer, their price point, and know that ultimately they're going to have a earnest money check that's going to be cashed. And then also the appraisal, about within 2 to 3 weeks, they'll need to have the house appraised, unless it's a cash deal, unless they decide that they don't want an appraisal with a cash deal. But most lenders require an appraisal. So that's sometimes $450, sometimes maybe $600. So if you add up those three things I just talked about, the inspection amount, the appraisal amount, and the earnest money, because it's completely out of order, but it's usually earnest money, inspection, and then appraisal, you're looking at a minimum of $1,500 that gets cashed that first couple of weeks. So if they're not aware of those things, you need to have serious conversations about those. Most people do understand that, most buyers, especially if they're seasoned buyers or have gone through the process at least once before. But this is what I'm talking about with a buyer's consultation. These are things that your buyers need to be fully aware of, because if they don't know these and they don't have access to these funds, chances are they're not ready to be put in the car, to be driven around, to be let in someone's house. It's wasting your time. It's wasting their time. It's getting their expectations up for something that may not happen, and then it's wasting the seller's time as well, because you're bringing a buyer that's not capable to buy that home yet. So practicing those, having those conversations, really making it about them, because really and truly it is about them. You don't want to get their feelings or their expectations up and their excitement up about purchasing a new home if they're not capable of doing that right then. So that's kind of the way I deliver it. I would never want to disappoint you. I want the process to be just as great as possible. Let's start off on the right foot by making sure we have all these necessary items in place. I also talk about their loan. We talk a lot about what their closing costs may look like. Do they already know that? If they've not spoken to a lender, they might not be 100% sure of what closing costs may look like that they have to pay out of their pocket. It's not something that you can roll into the loan. A lot of people think that you can roll closing costs into a loan. And that's not true. You can't do that. So I say all that to say, you need to have serious conversations, and you really need to know if they do have a pre-approval, what does their lender look like? What are their closing costs going to look like? They should have a loan estimate from their lender that gives them those numbers, or at least a general idea of those numbers, and you need to know that they have that cash in hand to close. If they do not, then you'll need to be asking the seller to contribute to closing. And in our market right now, that's not a very popular thing to do. It makes it harder for you to win an offer right now. A couple of years ago, again, wasn't a big deal. Let's say a house was in the market for $150,000. Your buyer needs $4,000 assistance. You make a full price offer with $4,000 assistance from the seller. The seller says, that's great, I'll do it. And then it goes through. It's not happening anymore. So, and that's the kind of conversations you need to be having with your buyers. All these things that we have in our buyer's consultation really are driven by the market, what's happening in the market, what they know about the process. So if you feel like they have a good grasp on all this, you don't need to spend a lot of time on it. But if you have first-time home buyers, you really need to be having these conversations. And actually, the reason why I started this class was because I had walked in on a Saturday in the conference room. I had passed the conference room, and I had one of our brand new agents was with a client, and they were writing an offer, and just I could hear the conversation because the door was open, and just because of the language, I realized the buyer didn't have cash for any of these things. And I thought, well, time out, let's take a break. I butted in and said, let's have a discussion about, what's going on here. And come to find out that the person didn't have any extra money. So had they written an offer and that offer been accepted, if the buyer can't wiggle out of a contract because they don't have the money for the inspection or they don't have the money for the appraisal, you have, legally agreed to purchase a home. So that's why I was very concerned about making sure that the buyer's agents know the process. You need to know the process and what's involved. Okay, so next up would be, I talked about that. Okay, so expectations, setting expectations, making sure that you set them early. And what I mean is making sure that you are very clear with your clients about how you communicate. How often what times do you work? Do you start work at 9 o'clock in the morning? Do you start at 8? Do you start at 10? Do you take calls after 7 o'clock? If you don't do those kind of things with your clients, they will be texting you and calling you all the time. And the minute that you answer a phone call at 10:30, they'll always call you at 10:30 at night, and they will not back down from that. And you don't want to have to say halfway, hey, please don't call me at 10:30 anymore. You've kind of already set the expectation. So make sure that you're setting expectations with them. And that's kind of a gentle thing that you have to do, but just say, hey, by the way, I work like regular hours, 9 to 8 or whatever. If you call me at 8:30, I'll return your call the next day unless it's something urgent. But other than that, I'll return it the next day. It just makes the process a lot smoother. Other expectations is that, what you talk to them about their lender. Hey, your lender is going to need you to, once you're under contract, your lender is going to need you to get things to them quickly and efficiently, otherwise it can delay closing. So making sure that you're constantly keeping in touch with your lender, seeing if they have everything they need. That's very important. That's setting an expectation. It's great to be able to know their lender. If you don't, I would definitely give them a call and introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm the agent. Please let me know if my client's not getting you what they need quickly, because I know how important that is to your business. It's like I said, it's just really great if you can already know or have a relationship with a lender up front. But when you're new, you probably don't. So you got to start somewhere. Okay, so paperwork. I got to go back and share this. So the paperwork that is required is all in .loop. And well, you can also find it on Valley MOS, but on .loop, oh, I did not. I guess I can show you where it is on Paragon. On Paragon, it's under resources. Nope, sorry, MLS documents. And it is under, okay, no, I can't see. Valley MLS forms. So here's all of the, if you for some reason cannot get into Dotloop and you need to print them out, or you need to have an emergency and you can't get into Dotloop, they're all here, but they are in Dotloop. And I thought I logged in, but I didn't. Sorry about that. I have, Stephanie has set up templates. So when you are ready to make an offer on something, she has a template for you that all the documents are there. But at the same time, when you're getting buyers, you should be having them set up with buyer agencies before you're writing an offer on something. So what I try to do is make a folder with someone's name on it, like this, the heirs. And I have all their buyer's agency docs there. So that way, when they're ready to make an offer on something, I already have the buyer's agency stuff done. And also too, it protects me since I know that we always have a buyer's agency. The first thing that I usually go over with my clients is the RECAD, which if you have not already been to orientation, you will see this in your PAR orientation. But the RECAD is just the Real Estate Broker Services Disclosure, and basically it is the form that explains what kind of agency agreement you have with them. You know, a single agent is the fact that you represent just the one party and that you are their fiduciary. You're completely loyal and faithful to them. I also say that everything's confidential. We work at the highest level of confidentiality. That is true in all cases, but with a single agent, you are only working for them, either the seller or the buyer. In this case, we're talking about the buyer. A sub agent we don't really use here. I wish they would kind of get rid of this, but I guess the way I explain it is that if I had another agent that also represented one party, but we don't ever have two parties with buyer agency agreement to represent the same client, or at least I haven't come across it. Limited consensual dual is the time when I say that, hey, there's a lot of Keller Williams homes listed on the market. This is when I have the buyer. If you were to purchase a Keller Williams listing, then both of the listing agent and myself become limited consensual dual agents. And that means that we have a limited amount of information we can tell you specifically regarding the price purchase of the home. There is another limited consensual dual sheet that explains it all fully. I don't usually go over it too much at this point, but I do show them the limited consensual dual paperwork. Also too though, this happened to me for the first time this past year. It also occurs if you have two clients looking at the same home. I did have two clients make the same offer on the same home. And in that respect, you're very limited on what advice you can give each client because you know the other party's offer. In my situation, I asked the broker to write the second party's offer for me so that I didn't even risk giving them any inside information. So I had no idea what they offered. I was still representing them, and Lisa wrote the offer for me or submitted the offer for me. But that was just to make sure that all parties knew I did not have any inside information about the other person's offer. And lastly, if you have a buyer that comes to like one of your open houses for your listings and they want you to represent them for the purchase of your listing, you can represent both sides, but you are a limited consensual dual agent. Transaction broker is when you are just doing, you're helping the person with the paperwork. And the example that I use here when I talk to my buyers about this is I tell them, if, for example, you were going to purchase a for sale by owner, I could still represent you as your single agent, but I would be the seller's transaction broker. I do that for two reasons. I use that example, and that is my segue to tell them, hey, if you are come across a for sale by owner, I'm happy to help you with it. Just know that you need to let me know first, and I need to work out my commission with the selling agent. If you do not mention anything about for sale by owners on Sunday when they're driving around and a for sale by owner has a open house and they walk in, they completely forget who you are and you just lose the sale. So make sure you talk about for sale by owners with your client. Second thing that I would take in my consultation and the paperwork is the exclusive buyer's agency agreement. This is basically the document that hires you where they are hiring you. I don't fill this out for you guys 100% in this class, but it's pretty self-explanatory. They do go over it in HAR. If you have any questions, let me know. The period that I usually put in is to work for them is 6 months. I do not charge a retainer. Some people do. I've heard it happen, but I do not. I always put 3% here, and I put 3% of purchase price in this other part. And then I put 30 days in here, basically saying that I'm protected for 30 days after, should they have purchased a house that I showed them and didn't tell me about it. And again, this is just the document that hires you to work for them. It's very important to have buyer's agency. You want to have this as soon as you possibly can, hopefully the first time that you've met, to get them to sign that. That also protects you if you, it protects you as much as possible for if they go and look at new construction and they don't mention you. Sometimes you can get the new construction companies to honor your buyer's agency. Sometimes they don't. It just depends on who the builder is. But it's always best to protect yourself to have your buyer's agency agreement signed. The next one I go over in my agreement is the general information for purchasers. And basically what this is a definition of terms. It's very important, especially for your first-time home buyers. This is the document that I highly, highly recommend that you either read through it line by line with them, even though that's kind of boring. Do be able to really summarize every point very quickly, but also with some authority, because this is where a lot of people get in trouble, because your buyer said, well, I didn't know that. And if you just pencil whip this document and you haven't explained it to them, you have not provided them any service. When you go through this document and you talk about things that may or may not be potential problems, you eliminate the possibility of having any kind of bumps in the road. I'm not going to go through it line by line for you, but the examples that I use specifically, number 5, I talk about minor imperfections, because this is when I set up my expectation that when it comes time for the request for repairs, they are not to ask for minor things that are cosmetic. It says it right here. Some imperfections in the property may not clearly mark the definitions of major defects. They can discover them. If they want to ask them to be fixed, the best thing to do is to put it in the contract and not wait for the request for repairs period, because you cannot bust a contract or get out of a contract because you've asked for cosmetic things to be fixed and the seller says no. It states it in the inspection addendum. It has to be major defects that the seller is not agreeing to do, or hazardous conditions. Anyway, I use that. I use the sex offender example too. I say, hey, I'm not allowed to tell you where the sex offenders live because I'm not an expert on that. I don't 100% know these things. It is your job to go and look. And if you do not bring that up and they purchase a home and 3 days after closing, the neighbor comes over and says, gee, we're so glad you're in the neighborhood, but I'm surprised that you have small kids. I'm surprised that you didn't know that there's a sex offender that lives across the street, or that you don't care that there's a sex offender that lives off the street, or whatever. All the neighbor has to say is that there's a sex offender that lives across the street. And if they didn't know that, and you didn't talk about where they can find that information, who are they going to be mad at? They're going to be mad at you, and they're not going to give very good reviews for you because they're going to be upset that you did not tell them that. Now, it's not your job to tell them where the sex offenders live, but it's your job to be the source of the source. And that's what you're called, the source of the source. We tell people where to find things and how to figure it out. Okay. There's other things on that document that are important as well. Please go through it, read through it, know it, and be able to really explain the importance of that document to them. It's very important for your future of the deal. Okay, so we did RECAD, we did buyer's agency agreement, general information. The other ones are kind of what I shouldn't call them fluff documents, but they're disclosures saying that you have told them something. Capital title is the disclosure that says we have a business, Keller Williams Madison has a business relationship with Capital Title, and that we are telling them that because we have direct or indirect ownership. So we are telling them that. They do not have to use Capital Title. They can choose their own title company, but if they do, you have told them that we have a financial relationship with them. Sight unseen, a lot of people are buying houses without seeing them. They're overseas or out of state and they want to make an offer on something because it's going so quickly. You must have the sight unseen agreement signed. Let's see what else. There's limited consensual dual. This is the definition or the form that defines limited consensual dual in more detail than I just did. Let's see. I'm missing something. Affiliated business disclosure. This is if your buyers are deciding to use Keller Mortgage, you need to have them sign that. Letting them know that they don't have to choose the mortgage company, and you have told them that Keller Williams has a financial relationship with Keller Mortgage as well. So again, it's just a disclosure. I feel like I'm missing something. I think that is it. You also have to provide them with an estimated closing statement. You don't have to do it before you make a purchase on a home, but when you do, you need to provide them with that. That is found in screen share. That is found in Valley MLS. You just go to Valley and you go to the MLS documents. It's already open, sorry. You go to estimated closing statements, and they're both right here. One is for cash, one is for lending. It's opening now, sorry. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It is auto-populated. It's really easy to use. So all you have to do is put in the amount and it will break it down for you. Let's say it's $250. Once you've been in the business a really long time, or maybe not, you just have really good skills to memorize things. I do not. It took me a long time to memorize these. Keegan was really good at it. Keegan could probably rattle off all these numbers pretty much spot on. You can kind of go over these numbers with them on your own. The Harder organization put this estimated closing statement together for us, and it is a very, 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 very rough estimate. See right here, it says circled estimate. People freak out when they see the numbers because they are usually higher than their lender, but it's just to kind of protect them so that they're pleasantly surprised when they get their actual numbers and they're lower. But once you've done it enough, you kind of get an idea of what these amounts are. A lot of them, some of these aren't in there. Underwriting fee and processing fee is kind of low to me on this side, but again, those depend on who the lender is. So I stress to my clients all the time, closing costs differ from lender to lender. You really need to do a good job of finding out what different lenders charge and go from there. And then when they finally pick a lender, you want to be in communication with that lender to find out what their closing costs look like, and that way you're all on the same page, especially before they make an offer. Because if they're requesting closing cost assistance, you're going to want to know how much they're going to need. You don't want to leave too much money on the table, but you also don't want to not get enough assistance for them. But anyway, that just gives them a rough estimate of what their total closing costs will be. And it gives them an idea of where the money goes. But once you are under contract, you must have them sign an estimated closing statement with the amount that they have purchased. And we'll talk about that more when we come to the contracts to close. That is in contracts to close. So I went over those really fast. Again, this is not intended for a class for me to teach you every single part of the document. It's really just so that when you do finally get something under contract, you'll have said, oh, I've heard that before. A little bell will come off in your brain saying, oh, I do remember Gina mentioning RECAD and buyer's agency and the buyer's acknowledgement statement for capital title, all those kind of things. What I do is I print them all off and I have them in a folder. For a long time, I had them in a binder that I had examples written down so that if I was going to write a contract or I found a new buyer and there was nobody in the office on a Sunday, I went to my cheat sheet, I called it my cheat book, and I had examples written down so I had at least something to reference. But with ALC, usually one of us is always available. We're very happy to help you. in that arena. Again, don't freak out. You're not expected to memorize these from the minute you do this. If you're lucky enough to have one buyer a month, you do this one time a month. So that's why it's hard to remember, and it's hard to get into a certain rhythm, because it's challenging to get new business when you're starting. So, but if you're getting 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 buyers at a time, that's awesome. Congratulations. And you're getting more practice with it. You'll learn it faster. It's just a learning process. So don't feel bad for asking for help. I think I probably sometimes I still ask for help on some of my contracts. But with your buyers, the main part of this I wanted to discuss was the buyer's consultation and the contract, the administrative paperwork required for buyers, because you want to know what you have to fill out. We talked about estimated closing statements. CMAs, you are going to want to learn how to do a comparative market analysis, because you're going to have a buyer that wants to buy a home in a neighborhood, and they're going to ask you, what's a good price for this home? They want to know. They want to know that you know the value. Right now, again, when I first started this class, we really talked a lot about CMAs because, you know, it was a different market. Now, when you have multiple people offering a house, the CMA kind of goes out the window. You want to kind of know the ballpark about where the neighborhood is at what price point. But if your client loves the house and they're willing to go $10,000 over and it appraises, you know, that just might be what it is. There is such limited inventory, so it changes market analysis a little bit. I have a client that really wants to always be competitive with the CMA when they make an offer on a house, and unfortunately, we've lost several houses because I'll show them the numbers, and the numbers may not match what the purchase price is on the home, but it doesn't matter because other people are willing to go over. So I tell them, hey, here's the CMA, here's what the numbers look like. The house is listed for $250. By the numbers of the CMA, it's really only worth about $230, but all these other people are going to pay $260 for it. So we have conversations about what it's worth to them. Unfortunately, right now, they're not willing to go up over, so what has separated is they haven't found a house. Until they find that one they absolutely love and decide to pull the trigger, that's what probably will change the game on that. Have information about flood zones, school zones, the crime report sites, that type of thing. Make sure you talk to them about that's their job to find those things out themselves. You can be the source of the source, but do not tell them exactly 100%. Yes, I know this is not in a flood zone because I saw it on the MLS. You want to say, if you're concerned about this being a flood zone, or if you're concerned about requiring flood insurance, make sure you check it out. You can also put in the contract that the contract is contingent upon the home not requiring flood insurance. That's one way to protect your buyer. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. To prepare your clients for an offer, basically what you want to do is make sure they have their pre-approval letter. That's number one, and that it matches what price point you're looking for in the house. Making sure they have an earnest money. You can have an earnest money check on hold at the office. That way you're ready to go. So if you know they're purchasing in about the $300,000 price point range and you want to make an earnest money check for $1,500, have them write a check and Stephanie will hold on to it. You just put hold in the on the sheet that you turn in. That's by the mailboxes, and she'll hold it for you. That way, when they do make an offer, you already have it. You don't have to worry about it. Make sure if you do that, you take a picture of it so that you have it on your records that you can upload to Dotloop and have that ready to send to the listing agent. So the 4 things that I send to the listing agent when we're ready to make an offer is I send the pre-approval letter, I send the earnest money check, the offer, and I send the copy of the earnest money, and that I have it. Oh, sorry, an inspection addendum. So that's 5 things. Is that 5 things? That's 4. No, I'm confused myself. Pre-approval, earnest money, offer letter, inspection addendum. That's 4. That just makes sure that you are letting the listing agent know that you're a professional, that you've done this before, you have all your ducks in a row, your buyer is ready to go. If you don't send the earnest money, it's not a big deal. But if you get the contract, he or she's gonna ask you for a copy of the earnest money check. So you might as well just have it ready to go. Also, too, that makes your buyer more to me, I feel like, it makes your buyer more locked in. if they're ready to give you an earnest money check and they're ready to go and have it on hold at the office, that means they're serious. It gives them more of a buy-in. And so what we'll talk about, not today, but in the next class or the last class, is I'll go through the offer letter and we'll fill it out and you can see what that looks like and the inspection addendum. And we do talk a little bit more about buyer related things in that class as well. What has changed from this class since when I first created it is that we used to just have to submit all of our documents in .loop. Now you have to do it in command, in the documents in command. So unfortunately you have to learn both, but it's still a good thing. .loop's really easy to use, and then it's not too hard to upload it to command, but that's not something you need to worry about right now. Unless you have buyer's agency agreement, it is good to go ahead and upload them to command if you already have them. But if you don't have them in command, it's okay to just have them live on .loop. I'm trying to think, I feel like I'm leaving something out simply because it's hard when there's nobody asking questions, or I usually do a lot of storytelling just because I do feel like people learn more through examples, and that's another reason why I started this class was it was used to just be based on my examples of what I did wrong. So I tried for people not to learn the hard way, but unfortunately it is a job that's trial by fire, and sometimes you have to make some mistakes in order to learn. Hopefully they're not too expensive, and hopefully they're not something you can't get your buyer out of, but mistakes are made. It happens. The way you learn is through practice, and if you don't have a bunch of active buyers, it's challenging. But like I said, what you can work on now is going through the documents, knowing what the documents say. For example, one thing I forgot to bring up in the buyer's agency agreement is that it lists 3% in there, but that the buyer is to pay the buyer's agent 3%. But the next line says that the buyer can add in an offer for the seller to pay the buyer's agents for 3%. Well, it's always true in Alabama. Well, I shouldn't say always. It's true that the seller that lists on the MLS is already willing to pay the buyer's agent's fee. Sometimes they're only willing to pay 2.5. If you look at the down at the bottom of the MLS sheet where it says buyers and transaction brokers and sub-agent, if you see buyer broker there and it says 2%, that means that that seller is only willing to pay the buyer's agent 2%. If your buyer's agency agreement says that the buyer's going to pay 3%, well, there's a 1% difference there. So who's paying that? Legally, if your buyers signed that exclusive agency agreement that said 3%, technically they owe you 1%. And legally, you could go after them for that difference of 1%. I've never known anybody to do that. That could happen. I don't know. But again, the document says that the buyer may write in any offer that the seller pays that fee. If you really wanted that difference of 1%, you would have to write in the offer that the seller has going to up the commission to 3% instead of 2%. Anyway, things like that, sometimes they come up and you just learn the hard way through them. Again, I've never known any agent to say, no, I want the difference in 1%. Usually most buyer's agents just take what the seller is willing to pay, but I'm sure it's happened somewhere. So, but know the documents inside and out while you're waiting to get a buyer, while you're working for buyers. And then also too, when I was new, I spent a lot of time hanging out with agents. Unfortunately, that's not happening now because of COVID, but I spent a lot of time in the office listening to stories because that's where I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. Hopefully soon we'll get back to doing things the old-fashioned way and be inside the classroom, because this is very nerve-wracking for me. I'm sure it's nerve-wracking for you to sit and listen to my voice without having any interactions. I taped this one specifically because I do have something to do tomorrow and I wanted people to be able to have access to it. Hopefully the next two I'll be able to do live, but if not, I'll have the same recorded version. But if you guys have any questions, like I said, I know I talk fast and I went over that on a very high level. Please feel free to reach out to me via text, call, email. I usually answer pretty quickly. My cell phone is 256-617-9470, and my email is just my name, Gina Barlow @kw.com. And then so again, the next class will be based on sellers, kind of the same format. talk a little bit about seller expectations, the selling documents, a little bit about uploading things to the MLS, and then the last class will be when the two meet together in the process of what's required of a buyer's agent during the under contract phase, what's required of the selling agent under the under contract phase, and how to get to closing and the things that you need to do to make sure that happens. So anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Okay, I think I'll stop sharing the screen. Again, hopefully you got a little bit from it. When you are under contract, again, I cannot stress enough, don't feel bad, and don't not reach out to someone, especially if you have a question before writing an offer. So, all right, y'all. Hope you're doing well. Take care.